in the meeting.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of 2021. It's nice to see your faces. Well, we have a couple people that have joined by phone. If you could just say who you are so we know who's here, that would be great. Maybe their audio isn't set up just yet. So I'll ask again. And, oh, we have somebody.
Ryan McLean's here.
Thanks, Ryan. 9315, the last four digits 9315 is Ryan McLean.
That's me.
Okay, perfect. And who has the phone number with the last four digits 3730? Okay, maybe their audio isn't set up, so we'll ask again in a few minutes. We might as well get started. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll make the motion, Bill Ribble.
Thanks, Bill. Second?
I'll second Dennis Ryan.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda for tonight's meeting, say aye or raise your hand or do something so Julie knows we're approving it.
Aye.
Aye.
And then if I could entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting, which was December 9th.
I'll make the motion again, Bill Ribble.
Thanks, Bill. Moving us right along. Anybody second?
I'll second. Dennis Ryan.
Dennis, was that you? Okay, perfect. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye so Julie can tell we're approving the agenda. Great.
Aye.
The other phone number was Brian Rasnick, by the way.
Perfect.
He emailed.
Okay, I'm just also trying to make a note of who's here. So if I have to call on people, I know who's where. Okay, so before I see that Mrs. Gittens is here and on the agenda, her report is actually after our presentation. So I'll go ahead and follow the agenda since it's here. Tonight we are going to have a presentation. Cindy, you can introduce it, but it's based on Objective 1 of Envision 2030. And I believe that this topic, social emotional learning and mental health initiatives, are one of the things that this committee voted on to learn more about as part of the strategic plan. In our first meeting, we voted, and then at our second meeting, Cindy kind of put this all together for us. So Cindy, if you want to introduce Lori and Mary, and they can go ahead and get started.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. Yes, they're going to present on part of Objective 1. You may recall we heard from our curriculum directors around the academic pieces of Objective 1, and Lori and Mary Lynn are going to talk to us about the social, emotional, and mental health pieces. So Lori Brooks is our Director of School Counseling and Mental Health Services, and Mary Lynn Rodriguez is a coordinator. So I'm going to turn it right over to them, and they can get started with us today.
Thank you very much, Cindy, and thank you to the members of the committee for allowing us the opportunity to present to you on this topic that's near and dear to our heart. It's part of the work of our department, and it's very important work in our opinion. We're also very passionate about it. So a little bit of background for me. I'm the Director of School Counseling and Mental Health Services, as Cindy said. This is my 29th year with the school district, I believe. And I was a teacher and then a counselor and then an administrator. And I've been in this particular position at the district office for, I think it's 10 years now. So every day brings new challenges, and our kids certainly do need us. And so it's an honor to serve our students, our teachers, and our families in this capacity. And I'd like to turn it over to Mary Lynn to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. As Lori and Cindy said, I'm Mary Lynn Rodriguez. I am the coordinator for school counseling services. This is my 17th year, I believe, in the district. I'm happy to have served in the district as a teacher as well for elementary level, as a school counselor at the elementary and high school level. I'm also a licensed mental health therapist or clinician, so I also have that title as well. So I've worked in all of those capacities and love serving our district and putting those all together in my role right now as a coordinator.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. So I'm going to share my screen and we can begin our presentation. We will definitely have time for question and answer, as I'm sure you'll have some. And, so without further ado, we'll get started on social emotional learning and mental health. And as we enter 2021 and we get back to work, one of our biggest things as trainers too, and I know we're not training tonight, but we always want to take a minute, especially with our school mental health professionals and our parents and our students, to really have them reflect and kind of ground themselves for the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Lynn to just take us through a little bit of an activity to get us started.
Okay, we're going to give you a timer in just a second, but when Lori starts the timer, we just really want you to take us a moment and think about what you're grateful for today. If you feel comfortable, you may go ahead and type it in the chat box and we'll kind of review them when we're done, but just think for a moment, and what are you grateful for today?
Oopsie.
Okay.
Sorry, about 10 more seconds.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Mary Lynn, I can't see the chat
Think
box,
it's the
obviously,
timer.
if I click anything.
Okay.
I'm going to let you do
Thank you. I have the chat box open, and then the timer had stopped on my screen. So it looks like many people have stated either good health, good mental health, family, and working with the team of people that are present here today, putting students first and putting children first. Very good things to be grateful for. Just taking that second and reflecting on that, somebody puts us in the mind frame and refocuses us on what we're doing. That's why we kind of have to take a look at that and ask you to do that.
Thank you for participating.
Yes.
Our objective this evening really is to help you gain a better understanding of what the school district is doing in regards to universal social emotional learning for students. What are we doing for all students? But also, what do we do when students need more? Also, the additional ways that we've scaled up and scaled out for students, but also our teacher resources specific to COVID-19 and being in a pandemic, and all of the kind of the minefield we've all had to navigate that comes along with this time in our world's history. What kind of training have we provided for school staff and continue to provide? And then also, as we know, social emotional learning is a foundational layer of layers of services and systems of care, including school-based mental health services. So we can't really talk about social emotional learning without talking about the whole continuum. So our compelling question this evening, and what we're going to ask you to think about, because every time we present to any group of stakeholders, we need takeaways as well. So we would like to hear from you at the end of our presentation, suggestions that you may have for us as a district related to social emotional learning and supports for students, because you're on this committee from various areas, and we all have our own personal contexts that we bring with us and our lenses through which we look at things. And so we would welcome your suggestions to this question at the end of our presentation. So we found this graphic a while ago, but it just seems so appropriate. Our kids have baggage. They have backpacks they bring to the building every day, but they also have emotional backpacks. And in all honesty, we all do. We have our work bag that comes into the building and goes back home with us, but we also have all the other stuff in our lives that comes with us as part of the things that either build us up or weigh us down in our emotional backpacks. And for some of our students, it's hunger and homelessness, or sickness and abuse. It could be abuse, it could be anxiety, it can be illness and things that they work through, or ongoing managed medical conditions. It can be a lot of these things. So just something that we want to remind ourselves of, that these are our kids and there are adults walking into our workplaces every day.
So as Lori was mentioning, we have with that that cartoon, that we have our backpacks, we have things that we bring with us every single day. And if we look at that in a hierarchy of needs, many of us, I believe all of us, probably have seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs and familiar with it. But if we take a closer look at that and we compare to what that is, our students and what they bring every single day, obviously this is applicable to all of us, but in our focus right now on our students and our school buildings, we look at what their basic needs are. And the theory is that if we have our physiological needs met, our safety needs met first, then it continues, the pyramid builds one on the other. Then we're ready to go on to the next phase. We're ready to then reach that sense of belonging and love, looking for that sense of love and belonging. And then our esteem is able to be built, and our self-actualization is actually, we can actually achieve that. So we look at those areas, and if you look at the physiological needs, that is from your esteem needs down to the basic needs, those are called deficiency needs. Those are things that tend to be lacking. And if they are lacking, if they're not being met, we really can't reach that very top piece of the pyramid. We can't reach our growth stage where we're able to develop and fully self-actualize. I'm going to highlight for a second, if we look at what self-actualization is, this is achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. If think about that, that's a familiar phrase. Our district's mission statement. Our district mission statement is to ensure that each student achieves his or her highest personal potential. Well, this is where we want to be. We want to look at those basic needs of that hierarchy and help our students to reach that self-actualization, be the best that they can be, so that they're ready to learn and they're open to that next phase. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
Okay, so now if we take the hierarchy of needs from Maslow and we apply it in an educational setting, this is what it looks like. We have our basic pieces at the bottom, but Bloom, which is Bloom's learning, that starts again at that very top. It's where the motivation, the learning, the creativity, problem solving all happens. But again, looking further down in that pyramid, if we have a student, the very basic, who is hungry, who is thirsty, it could be that they didn't sleep very much, they're not ready in that classroom to learn. They're not at their best self to learn and to take in all the wonderful information that our wonderful teachers have there to present to their students. So really addressing that and looking at those components. We take a second and we reflect. What are we like when we're hungry? Maybe we skipped lunch all day because we've been busy at work. And at the end of the day, we're hungry and we're driving home. Our mind might be distracted because we're thinking about, what can I make for dinner? What am I going to eat? Or even the basic need of having to use the restroom because we've been go all day. We're distracted. Our mind is not, if somebody's asking us to tune to the conversation that we have there, we're not really able to focus. So that's just a very basic look at our physiological needs. And then if we have kids coming to school that are hungry, or that are thirsty, or whatever it may be, they're not ready for that learning environment, and to then again grow and learn and walk away from that learning environment with more information.
One of my favorite parts of us creating this slide or adapting it, it's not ours, but we adapted it a little bit, is it's a perfect illustration of that phrase, we need to Maslow before we can bloom. And we use that terminology so often in our district that the Maslow piece is critical before kids can engage in Bloom's taxonomy.
Right. Okay, so taking all of that information and knowing Maslow's hierarchy of need and what piece our students are ready to learn, we take that into the social emotional realm and we look at this sphere, if you will, this globe or sphere, and look at it. And this is our roadmap. This is our roadmap. How are we going to address our social emotional needs and learning, provide those to our students? We're going to put social emotional needs right at the center. And we're going to provide it through our teachers and in the classroom at the district level in our district building and that education. And not only there, but we're going to also reach out to the family and the community. A lot of social emotional curriculums have that piece already embedded within that. They provide the parent connection, the parent communication, and that's one way to reach out because it's a home and school connection that we build at all levels to help support our students.
So one of the parts of this presentation, sorry, Mary Lynn, I apologize, is that we're going to take you through our school SEL initiatives, and then we're going to scale it up to the district level, and then how this fits systemically, as I mentioned earlier, into all of our systems. And so Mary Lynn's now going to talk about some of the school-based SEL initiatives and how they pull from our district umbrella.
Mhm. And I want to say briefly, you guys are up here on my screen, way up on top, and my camera's down here. So I apologize if you keep seeing me look up because I want to see your faces, but the camera's down here. So just so you know, I'm keep going like this. All right. So looking deeper into our roadmap that we had just talked about and social emotional initiatives in our district, what is it that we're doing at a roadmap? What does that look like in our district? Well, we have family and community, parent resources, that are out there, family nights, student-led conferences, community partnerships, positive ticketing, meaning focusing on the positive and providing those pieces, making phone calls home, positive reinforcement of a student behavior that we may have seen. What does it look like policy and practice-wise in our district? We have PBIS, our code of conduct, restorative practices within our schools, recognitions, MTSS, and interventions that are provided to our students. Okay. And then curriculum-wise, what are the curricula that we use district-wide to help support that that universal social emotional learning within our district? Well, we have Second Step, Leader in Me, Sanford Harmony, which conscious discipline, love and logic, zones of regulation, health curriculum, counselor-made curriculum as well, AVID and ROTC. So all of the curricula that you see listed there support the social emotional learning standards and or our specific social emotional curricula that are available that are supported by CASEL standards. So let me tell you what, in case you're not familiar about what CASEL stands for, it's a collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning. And they formulated a standard nationwide of what that would look like, what is social emotional learning standards are. And if you see at the center of the circle that's on your screen, self-awareness, self-management, those 5 components right at the center, those are the 5 competencies that we should be working on and achieving for social emotional development. And those are their standards. And when they review curricula, CASEL themselves review curricula that nationwide, and they uphold those curricula to those 5 standards to see how they support and help a student or youth develop in those areas.
So you noticed earlier on our slide just before this one, these 3 rings in dark blue leading out to light blue are the SEL curriculum instruction, the school-wide practices and policies, family and community, that aligns with the graphic we just showed you, because everything we do has to align with CASEL for evidence-based learning. So now we are going to talk a little bit about our district initiatives and kind of scale this up to that larger umbrella. So in addition to the social emotional learning that we've talked to you about thus far, and the fact that our schools have our structures, I'm going to go back a slide. They have the policy and practice that you see on the bottom left corner of this slide. These are our district frameworks through which our schools function. And they have their climate and their culture and their school, kind of their ethos and their paradigm set up with these general frameworks. But then on the right side, with their choice of curriculum, that really is up to each school to choose what best suits their student learning and their setup so that this can be infused into their school. When we get down to the district initiatives, though, we also have district level expectations as well, such as our Wellness Wednesdays. This is district-wide instruction so that our students have particular lessons that are uniform throughout the district by grade level, and they progress academically. So we have 3 state Board of Education rules that were passed in the summer and fall of 2020. And they were related to education on the topics of mental and emotional health in grades 6 through 12, and then substance use and abuse, health education, and child trafficking prevention, K-12. And so, of course, they need to be developmentally appropriate. It needs to progress each year. And they do preserve that mental and emotional health component to the middle and high school level. And so we had to then, as a district, determine our scope and sequence to meet the State Board of Ed rule requirements. And then what programs were we going to offer that would work for all of our students in grades kindergarten all the way through grade 12. The other portion of this that is important to note is this is required health instruction. When we have health that can be offered, health education every year of the K-12 continuum, then these three main topics are embedded into that instruction that has so much more to it. Nutrition and hygiene and personal fitness. However, because districts have been unable to fund health instruction every single year of that kindergarten through grade 12 continuum, the State Board of Ed decided that these are the three most important topics that every child needs learning on every single year. And they highlighted these three areas, which is why it's a special initiative. Cindy, I just want to pause for a minute because I'm home and on my laptop and I don't have a dual monitor. I just wanted to make you aware that I can see nobody. So if you ever need to cut in or interject to stop us, please do so. I just can't see anybody so that everyone can see my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So the mental and emotional wellness State Board of Education rule was actually very detailed. So we're providing you the list of precisely what topics need to be covered in grades 6 through 12. And what we really found heartening about this is these topics right here align exactly with our staff training. These are the exact topics that we train our staff to help students and adolescents with. They are educated on signs and symptoms. What is typical or atypical for development of an adolescent or a youth? How do we prevent mental health disorders? And how do we also provide assistance based on this increased awareness? Reducing stigma is really a major initiative that's interwoven into every one of our efforts because frequently, even as adults, we do not understand some of the stigmatizing language we may use without intent. For example, when we discuss suicide, we'll say died by suicide or took his or her own life or took their life. We don't say commit suicide because the word commit typically is a negative connotation. We commit crimes, we commit adultery, we commit these things that are looked at negatively. And so that's one of the lessons in our training for students and for our staff is that we talk about the language around suicide, but also we don't say, hey, there goes that diabetic kid. But some of our students and teachers will say, oh, you're so bipolar. Now, I think in the last several years with this training, that has vastly reduced. But it used to be that we would just kind of throw these things around casually. And this training for our students and our staff have really helped us think about our words. Awareness of resources, including what we have in the district, but also referrals for community resources. How do we connect individuals to support and treatment? And then strategies. We all have our own strategies for coping. And we have to continue to help each other and our children think about that and develop their emotional toolbox and put more tools in there or kind of grab their tool belt. And what tools do you go to regularly that you can, it's like muscle memory. You know what to do when you're feeling anxious. Is it like the deep breathing, what sometimes we call combat breathing or box breathing? Is it that? Is it going to be that you do your 5 senses and in your head, you ground yourself by, I'm going to tell myself 3 things I can see, 3 things I can smell. We have students using these strategies inside their head every day, but a lot of people don't know these strategies. And so that's part of our education. And also, how do we support each other? And suicide prevention is a big piece of this because education and knowledge is power when it comes to recognizing the signs of suicide and how to intercede. And then, of course, prevention of the abuse of and addiction to substances. Wellness Wednesdays has been in place since last year, and then all of a sudden we have a global pandemic, and we are trying to now scale up and scale out our supports for students. And so we're laying this foundation with our social emotional learning programs, all of the structures you saw a couple of slides ago, and then Wellness Wednesdays on top of that. And then we have COVID. So now our kids need more, because what was typical for our students and adults to experience as maybe anxiety and the typical troubles of life, or sometimes we have individuals who struggle and need some special support with some certain emotions, but now we had a much greater number of people in need of services and support. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Lynn to talk about what we did with social emotional learning and mental health as a result of COVID.
Okay, so as Lori was mentioning, COVID-19 and the sheltering in place has really taken an effect on our students and families' mental health. So as a district, in our response, we have come up with specific programs to address the mental health challenges as a result, and ways that we can support our staff and our students within the schoolhouse. We weren't sure what it may look like, so going in, but so we provided, I would say, a comprehensive look of a way to support going into the school and starting off our school year. So what that was a transition back to school toolkit that included lessons, resources, and tools for schools. The lessons encompass, just to kind of give you an idea, relationship building lessons, health and safety had their components in there. As far as resources, attendance was also discussed in the back to school toolkit. We had overview of SEL, again, a refresher for staff members, as well as the standards that we just showed you earlier. We put those in there so that it was, again, a reminder of what the standards were. A list of mental health resources that were available, not only mental health, school-based mental health supports within our schools, but also mental health resources within the community. And then a mentoring piece that we, how we could mentor within our schoolhouse, and what that would look like, and who could they reach out to if they wanted some support with that. We also provided on-demand COVID social emotional curriculum. There were many different curricula out there that ended up providing some free resources available. So we also shared those within the back to school toolkit, so that if there was something else that they wanted to enhance, if they had something, they could do that. They could go online and enhance their current curriculum that they were using.
So we kind of jumped into, with the slide, what we did for back to school. However, as you're likely aware, once we were shut down in March, we moved everything within a week. When we had spring break for students, within 1 week, our curriculum department and also our student services department, under the leadership of our chief academic officer, we worked through everything we needed to do to get back into school, but also, again, address Maslow before we can bloom. And so we moved everything online, and from March through the summer, we were supporting our students and families virtually with a lot of individual counseling, referrals for services, and the community showed up huge. With support groups that they shared with us. And we have a lot of community partnerships already that we'll talk about in a little bit, but they really added services. And if families and adults and children didn't necessarily need counseling, we had a lot of support groups available. So even within our schools, though, we were offering, through our school counselors, social workers, psychologists, and licensed mental health professionals, a lot of support. But as we leaned back into school, we knew we had a whole different lift ahead of us. As Mary Lynn said, we had kids coming back to school and adults. We had more question marks at the end of our sentences than periods. We had no idea what safety was going to look like, but we knew that the feeling of felt safety was going to be critical to help our children come into the schoolhouse and be able to focus. And so with all the masking and the one-way hallways and the social distancing, the districts were doing their level best to make sure that we reduced spread. But along with that is, how do we really assuage the anxiety we were all feeling on the what ifs? Because this could look like anything when we were looking at this past August. Now we have a better idea what it looks like. And still things develop every day. But as we developed that back to school toolkit, and we provided the on-demand social emotional curriculum, we also leaned into the extra funding from the CARES Act. And we have put into place, through our school-based mental health teams, we put into place what we call CBITS. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy approach for small groups of kids that have higher levels or heightened levels of anxiety. And so we're really working hard on reducing anxiety and helping children through that. And then also if they were feeling depressed because of all the things that are going on when everyone's in a family unit in the same household for months. And so we've been really pushing out our small groups. And then also we developed another layer of our partnership with Salus Care through the CARES Act, and it's called the Community Family Response Teams Initiative. Now that took a couple months because we went to them right away and said, this is what we envision. And then we grew this idea with them. And we have 3 community family response teams now available, and they just started taking referrals. And each team is made up of a licensed mental health professional, a case manager, and a peer mentor. And this is entirely free for our families. This is any family in need because their child or children are experiencing impacts from COVID, which typically means the parents and guardians are too. So, they have to have a child in Lee County schools to trigger this service, but we are looking at the whole family system. We're looking at financial need. This is 100% free to them. And it's typically a 6-month stay in the program where we make the referral to Salus Care, and we are paying for them to get individual and family counseling, supports as needed. It might be their electric's about to be turned off, or they don't have gas to go and do the things they need to do. This team is going to identify through an in-depth intake with this family what their stressors are, what their needs are, and partner the counseling piece with supporting them through this difficult time. And now we've talked through a lot of layers, and then we want to share with you too the staff training we had in place and also how we expanded that this year. And back to Mary Lynn.
Okay, can you move?
Oh, yes, I guess I need to advance it, don't I?
Sorry.
My apologies. I can't
So-
see, and I apologize.
That's okay. So what we have provided to our staff members as far as professional development, our youth mental health first aid training, which is an in-depth course of looking at how to identify, or really a synopsis is to help them heighten their noticing skills. So what would make them say, there's something a little bit different about this student than their typical behavior. Those noticing skills that may lead them to ask a further question, that may lead them to make that connection to the school counselor, to the school social worker, something that may be different, or to even just start a conversation with the student. So the youth mental health first aid that training addresses that. And even if they were not only for a student that's not in crisis, but a student that may be in crisis, it helps provide our staff with some basic tools of getting that student to a school-based mental health provider to seek further assistance. We also have our Cognito training. We have 2 Cognito trainings that are available for teachers and staff to take online as many times as they would like. And it's for every level. It's at risk mental health awareness, another in-depth look at mental health awareness. And then in addition to that, we have the trauma-informed practices. So it really heightens and highlights practices that how to approach a student, how to approach a youth with a trauma-informed lens. We don't know what our students have come to school with and what they've gone through. what every single day, what they just left, an argument, unfortunately, sometimes abuse, or it could just be a constant stressor at home, parents lost job, something that may impact them with a toxic stress or trauma. So then this Cognito training takes some teachers through how to have more practices within their classroom of trauma informed. And then lastly, trust-based relational intervention. TBR, this training was offered to all of our school-based mental health professionals, which would include our school psychologists, our school counselors, our school social workers, and it was offered to them over the summer. They were given an in-depth training on the trust-based relational intervention. We also offered it for a briefer course to our admin. And then in addition, when we get to the point where we're able to do in-person training, our goal would be to offer in-person training to our teachers as well, so that they are also informed on trust-based relational interventions. And just to give you just a real synopsis of what TBRI, or trust-based relational interventions, is, it's a format of looking at how to make connections, how to empower a student, and how to correct. So those are the three basic principles: connecting, empowering, and correcting, and how to do that in a relationship, an effective relationship with students that may or may not have gone through trauma, or may or may not have gone through some difficult situations. It's applicable to all situations, but it tends to work well more with students that may have gone through something a little bit more significant, or that would not be something that would be atypical. So anything else you want to add to that, Laura? Okay, sorry.
Well, TBRI training is it started largely with foster care parents, because it does work well with kids from hard places, that's their term, kids from hard places. And what districts and states have found is that TBRI works extremely well with teachers and support staff in the classroom. Because at this point, even before this pandemic, we were better off treating each individual we encounter as if they may have trauma in their past. And like Mary Lynn alluded to, trauma does not have to be one significant life-altering event. For many of our individuals, students and adults alike, it could be repeated exposure over time to like food insecurity or housing insecurity, or an abusive relationship, even if it's the parents and the kids are not abused, they witness this over and over again. So TBRI, in our dream world, all of our teachers and staff will be trained in TBRI. There are states such as Texas where they do the entire state in training. It's a model throughout the entire state. Now I know that, we have a lot of energy, but our dream may not totally come true in the next decade, but we're going to do our level best to provide this training to schools as they desire to engage. And I'm excited to share that both Mary Lynn and myself and our mental health coordinator are going to become trainers, so that we can spread this training around our district as needed and desired in the future, because it really has had an impact. The reason we trained our school mental health professionals in this over the summer is, as practitioners, they can support our teachers and support staff when they're struggling with particular students. And when they can have that training, they can coach them through those situations using the principles of TBRI. So then we move into our crisis prevention and intervention training, and that's the PREPARE model. We have been training our school mental health professionals in the PREPARE crisis response model, because this is a national standardized evidence-based model. It was developed after Columbine, and it was used at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Mary Lynn and I went over to the school to help them reopen. And this model brings consistency and common language and activities to really processing, unfortunately, crises, and helping our students and our staff and our parents process through, whether it's the death of a teacher or a student, or a large scale event such as a school act of violence. This model works. And so we are trainers and we train our staff in this model, and that continues. We are almost done. I know we're sharing a lot of information and we're almost finished. And I feel like we kind of just give you this fire hydrant approach I do think it's important you see the whole context, because now I'm going to talk about how all these initiatives also fit into our school-based mental health services. And we're on the home stretch of our presentation. So I'm not going to read all this to you about what are school-based mental health services. We really provide a spectrum from prevention all the way through intervention and then postvention. And by postvention, I'm talking about the crisis response if we have a death or a loss or a school-based incident that causes anxiety. It's essential. School-based mental health services are really critical to each school's ability to ensure a safe and healthy learning environment for all students. Our goal is to support their social emotional needs. All of our kids come to school. We need to be the place where we can help families identify and respond to mental health needs, so that we can also reach our end result, which is timely graduation, and promote the students' academic success, and allow them to be able to join the adult world ready to be successful and healthy. And then we dovetail with community-based services, because we are totally a system of care. We don't exist in a bubble in our schools. We are a microcosm of society, and so therefore we are part of the community and need to be aware of and respond with, in a symbiotic nature, our community-based services with the parent and student at the center of that, providing that permission if they want to, and also those wrap services so we can make sure we support that student and family. This illustration, Ms. Gittens, you've seen this before in our board presentations, and actually you're going to see it again in another one very soon, because it really illustrates how we build the foundation of prevention. And then with our students that need more, they may have gaps, they may be struggling, we go to the supplemental second tier in the yellow zone. And then we do, for some of our students, need to be up towards that red peak, where we really are talking with their families and with them about our licensed mental health professionals providing school-based services that are mental health related, or a referral out into the mental health community. And of course, I go back to the parents are the center and core of this process. Our job in Tier 1 is to make sure we're providing these services to all students. But as we enter the need for more, and we are concerned it may be a mental health need, that's when we have parent permission to screen, and we give them options to serve or to kind of select the interventions they think would best suit their child. Now, outside of mental health, all of our kids always get Tier 1 in all of the social emotional learning, all of these, but there are some students that need Tier 2 that is not mental health related, it's more additional learning. For instance, in elementary school, if we've talked about appropriate anger management, and I have a student who still continues to lash out at another student or other students when he or she becomes angry, it may be that they need additional learning for developing other coping skills. It may not be mental health, it's just additional learning. So we put them into either a small group or an individual situation where we're providing supplemental learning, but it's not going to be a mental health need. Now, if it continues or escalates, then we may be looking at doing a screening with parent permission for a mental health need. So what are the benefits of mental health in schools? Our job always is decreasing barriers to learning and increasing protective factors. Social emotional learning and our Wellness Wednesdays, that's all about building that coping skills toolbox or tool belt that I talked about. It's increasing, every individual has protective factors. Some have more than others, but everyone has at least a protective factor that we can help that individual identify and then leverage and then grow into other protective factors. So that's what we're consistently seeking in these services. And then also to decrease those barriers to learning. We want our kids to want to come to school and to come to school. We want to help them learn how appropriate behavior so that they're not getting referrals or suspensions. And bullying and harassment tends to reduce when we teach our students social emotional skills. And then, of course, we don't want to over-identify students for special ed referrals, and that has been an issue throughout the state. And our district has been working on reducing those referrals and making sure that when we get to that point, we indeed have examined all other aspects and interventions. And then we want to reduce our dropout rate, and we want to increase our graduation rate. Who provides school-based mental health services? Basically, it's everyone on this list. So our school counselors, social workers, psychologists, and we now have licensed mental health professionals that are district itinerants that we deploy through our department. They all serve on the mental health team and provide services. School nurses are absolutely a critical piece of our school mental health teams. In mine, and Mary Lynn can attest to this too, in my experience, many times my school nurse was the first one that brought me a concern about a student that was seen in the clinic for some repeated somatic complaints. And so our nurses are critical to this information. Every school has a school mental health team. It's a multidisciplinary team that meets weekly. They have a problem-solving model that is systematic and fact-based that they follow. They collect data and observable behavior and include the parent in these processes and the student. Students are very key to this work because they help us to help them the best, and their parents know them best. So they're an important piece as well. And then we have community partnerships. This is not an exhaustive list, but our community partners have really been eager to partner with our school district. Before the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting, we had such a vacuum. We still have a vacuum, but we had such a vacuum of services, whether it was our community mental health facilities that had very limited funding, but our schools had no funding for mental health. In fact, school-based mental health was really not a system. We were not part of the system. And when the mental health allocation was given to districts in the summer, once that legislative session ended after the Parkland incident, the community providers, we met with them, we reached out to them. We weren't quite sure how they would respond, but they were so eager and interested to make sure that collectively we serve our children and provide parents with options. And so we are really very proud of our community agencies, and we are thankful for them. I think this is almost my last slide. The mental health and wellness portal was a labor of love while we were trying to build our systems and get all that in place those first few months. I asked Mary Lynn to please work on this mental health and wellness portal that is a service to the community. It's on our leeschools.net website. It's on our public website. And when you go to the homepage, you just go to student services and you click mental health and wellness portal. And this has tiles for several different topics. So if an individual is up at 2 in the morning and they're struggling through how to get help for themselves or support their child, if they go to our portal, they can get some entry-level information and connections. And so we're really proud of that tool as well. And this is it. This is not a sprint. We know we are in this for the long haul, and it is really good work to do for our children, but it is a marathon. And so we celebrate our successes and try to mitigate our challenges as we go. And we annually assess our outcomes. We also do a lot of stakeholder surveys about the processes in place and trying to help our teams identify barriers people encounter that we may not see. And so we really use outcome data to drive our annual plan and improve it. We continue to build our community partnerships, and we seek additional funding sources. So we're consistently trying to grow that funding base as well. So as we conclude the sharing of our information, I go back to, first of all, Cindy, if you or the chair want to facilitate Q&A, but also we asked you a question at the beginning. about suggestions you may have for the district related to social emotional learning and support for students. And so again, I go back to, in addition to your questions, we are very interested in your feedback for us so we can ensure that we consistently do better and improve our work on behalf of our students and families.
Thank you, both of you. You did just a wonderful job. So much information there. And I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I think it did a good job of just showing the depth and breadth of what is taking place within the district, because the needs of our students have certainly increased since the pandemic has occurred. And you guys have really tackled that, head on. So Dr. Stork, if you want to go ahead and facilitate the feedback session, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you to Lori and Mary Lynn. That was a lot of information, but valuable information, I think, for the committee. So thank you for sharing all of the things that you're doing to address these issues. I have just two sort of questions, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee. The first one is, how do you measure the success of all of these different initiatives that you have?
That's an excellent question. So we, of course, gather a lot of data, and we do look at for students. First, we do monitor, because we have to and we want to, but it's a state reporting element, the number of students that we identify as potentially in need of mental health, and parents have declined to go that route. And then also the ones that have given us that permission to screen, and what services did we put into place and the effectiveness of those services. So we do that by looking at how the student has improved, and also how the student and the parent report back the improvement as well. So it's social emotional learning and kind of our universal prevention. And by the way, for mental health, that's just a few of the small data points that we have to analyze. And it's all done anonymously, of course. Like, we know who we're serving, but our state report is just numbers. But as far as social emotional learning, the programs that the schools use, many of them have pre and post assessments for the students, so they can gauge what they knew about that skill going in and what they learned coming out. We look at our discipline and referral data as well. And so a lot of our schools are tracking how the behaviors are changing and hopefully reducing as far as negative behaviors as they offer that learning.
Okay, thanks. And the second, it's not really a question, more of a comment, has to do with the portal that you developed for the suicide prevention, which I think is fantastic. But how, this question is coming from the fact that I started early in my career as a school district webmaster. So I know that the competition for real estate on the homepage of a district site is pretty tough. But how would one know to click on student services to access that portal?
So we've had that discussion as well with our webmaster, that there is so much in our district that does need to be front and center, and a lot of it is timely, and then they move it, right? So when the first few months that we had that, and we did make it publicly known that we had that resource, it was on like the splash area, or I forget what we call it now. I used to teach web design, so I'm going to date myself by about 20 years, the splash page area. It was on the banner, and it was very prominent. And then they did go ahead and they had to rotate through that. It's kind of right in that area where you can click on the COVID information now. But I don't know, except that a lot of our webmasters' work is trying to systemically put things where stakeholders will click or inherently go. And so it is under student services, which is right on that blue bar at the top of our website, which only has about 6 different options. But I kind of follow their lead on that, because I've been out of web design for a long time now. And they're trying, I think, to weigh all the minimal clicks people will take. Now, it's not just for suicide, so it's our mental health and wellness portal. What I screenshot that day when I made that slide was the banner that had suicide prevention on it, We have that rolling banner on our mental health and wellness portal for abuse counseling and treatment center, suicide prevention, SALIS care, and a couple other high level needs that we think a user might be seeking when they click on that mental health and wellness portal. But if you scroll down, we've got, I think, like 30 or 40 tiles with topics they can click on as well and get more information. And, you know, that's a good question too, Dr. Stork, that I am going to ask and follow up about, you know, really, are we certain it's in the best location?
One of the other places that I think it might be useful is, if it's not there already, I haven't checked, but in the section for community members. So if somebody wasn't familiar with the term student services necessarily, they might go to the section for community members and find that information as well. But it's kind of a balancing act of where stuff ends up on the district website, because there is a lot out there, but it seems like this is really timely information for currently where we're at. And I'd like to open it up to the rest of the committee if you have any questions or comments for Lori and Mary Lynn.
I'll just start off. I thought the presentation was outstanding. I was really impressed with the slides, how informative they were. And I kind of cheated and used my iPhone to take a lot of pictures. I hope, Cindy, I hope you'll send out the presentation to us when you get a chance. But excellent job. Good structure.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Mary Lynn.
This is Dennis
Harmony.
Ryan. Oh, I have a question for you ladies. As far as the screening done, is it done for each student? And do the caseworkers stay with those students while they're in school, for either middle school or through high school, to follow them and help shape and counsel them?
That's a great question. The screening is done for students that we have identified or have been referred to the team for possible concern as far as the mental health services go. And that screening is done only with parent permission, because it is kind of a lower level mental health screener. Once that screening is done with parental permission, and if a need is identified, yes, that student's supports will move from school to school and level to level. So that will continue to follow them, similar to a student with like an IEP support plan or a 504 plan. And some students, our ultimate goal with a lot of students is to help them and then scale them back, and then be able to go ahead and close them out because they have been doing so well. And that frequently happens. But while their case is open and we're trying to provide those services to them, that will follow them from school to school. Once they kind of graduate from those services, and some of our students, they will be managing their mental health because they just have a different level of service need. They may be managing it through their entire career in our school district or lifetime. And you know, their cases will stay open. But a lot of our students, for instance, with the anxiety, once we've helped them with these CBT groups to identify tools that work for them to help them work through these times of anxiety, they progress and they do well. We monitor them and then we close them out. And they could have a case again where they need additional services, but we try to go ahead and move that through so that we have our active cases and our closed cases are in the history, basically.
Very good.
I have a couple questions. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Amanda.
Okay, just one question about, you know, we have, I think we're at like 95,000 students. So I'm just going to use a number. I know it's in the 90,000s there. Like what percentage of students are we, you know, are these services touching? And is there some kind of target that, I guess the follow up to that, is there a target that we know we kind of want to be near when we're talking about the utilization of the services? Because I'm sure it's been impacted, especially with COVID, and you know, we lost some kids to virtual or home connect, and then maybe they came back, or maybe they didn't come back, or you know, like what are you kind of targeting towards? You know, and I guess that's how you measure your success of the programs. But like, how many people are we talking about here, students?
So I can pull my last annual report. I would just need to take a moment and I can tell you the number of students served during a school year. I can certainly give you that data. And I'll do that while we're taking another question in a few minutes. I'll just let Mary Lynn, you can take over. I'll pull that data. So I can tell you the number we've served for the 1920 school year. I would say our target really is every student in need, and it's hard to tell because it really happens as we go. Now, universal screening is a topic that we discuss, and when we go to our state meetings now via Zoom, I think we only have one district in Florida, and it's a small district, doing universal screening of students. One, because some parents would highly object to it. And so it's kind of, it could be a powder keg sometimes of a topic, because not all parents want us at, in that level of their child's business. But with universal screening, you probably have the best opportunity to identify the need. The fear and what comes up in these state meetings, and even at our national mental health conferences, it's, can we really serve the need? No, we probably can't. We do not have the resources to fully serve what a universal screener will identify. And that is the sad but true truth. At the same time, though, a lot of parents don't want us to screen their children. And sometimes screeners can identify for a child at a specific point in time. They just had a really bad day, and you'll spend a lot of time trying to drill into that. And so there are benefits and drawbacks to universal screeners, but to truly get the best number of students in need, that would be the widest net to cast, for lack of a better term. But the way we live now in our services is really truly through the identification and the training of our staff, the training of our students through like Wellness Wednesdays, so that they can increase their noticing skills and start talking either to the school mental health team members or a teacher or a paraprofessional, a bus driver, about a struggle. And then those individuals can refer them or connect them to their school counselor, et cetera, or they connect each other. And that's why the education piece really is critical as well. Mary Lynn, did I leave anything uncovered there?
The only piece that I may add to that is the social emotional. I know you're probably looking more at the mental health component, but all of the universal pieces that we discuss about social emotional, that would be something we would provide in some fashion universally to all of our students. It may look a little bit different because each school has the flexibility of choosing the curriculum that they want to use, or and how they want to implement that in their schools. But then it does, if you remember that pyramid that Lori showed, if it's a group of students that need a little bit more of a targeted focus because they're having a little bit of a struggle, then that school counselor may take that small group of students and work even further on that social emotional learning component, just specifically on certain topics. So, and that varies. Again, like Lori mentioned, it's the kind of same thing depending on the need and what's brought to our attention. Sometimes we use data, but mainly it might be something that we see in the classroom, or it may just be brought to our attention even through a universal lesson that's provided, then we might identify a student that way. I hope that helps, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the answers and great presentation. I agree with Mr. Ribble.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just have to do a quick total because I pulled my report. Roughly, we served, I'm going to say about 10,000 students last year.
That's a lot.
And that is also, though, school-based interventions, community-based. A lot of it is school-based. We track everything for our state report because they ask us the number of students we've screened and assessed, the number that we've referred for school-based. So for instance, if we're going to do individual or small group counseling under mental health, those students that engaged in that, we count them as well. And then how many we referred out. We try really hard not to inappropriately refer. Now, sometimes a parent wants a referral right off the bat, and we will talk to them about kind of the layers of uncovering that we would like to help them with. But if they want a referral and they're convinced that's in the best interest of their child, we'll have that conversation, but we don't deny them the referral because they know their family system and their child better than we do. But a lot of times we can have conversations with parents and say, did you know that we can screen your child? We have our school-based mental health professionals can offer a lot of services that don't have a diagnosis and a treatment plan attached to them that's out in the medical community. Not that they shouldn't go there if they need to, but some of our families will just kind of say no right off the bat because they think it results in, a permanent record of in the medical community. And we're like, no, we're here to intervene and provide services within the school as well.
I have one question. You were talking about the transition toolbox and discussing how teachers and staff were trained to help the students that were coming back. And students coming back to school this year, it's kind of been like Groundhog Day every day. There's a new student coming back. It's the first day of school somewhere in this district every day for one student since August. And which is a good thing because our administrators have worked very, very hard and our teachers want the children back there so they can help them. But that creates another issue. Some of the kids, we had the influx in October of the thousands of kids coming back. Then there were trickles along the way. And then now we have another influx January 4th and another one January 11th this week. And some of the ones in the recent influx have not been in face-to-face since March of last year. Mm-hmm. And I would just figure the mental needs would be very high, but how do our teachers and staff cope with that using the toolbox when you've got a room of 30 children and 15 have been there and the 5 have trickled in and all of a sudden 5 more come? How can we deal with that mental piece and have eyes on everybody all that time?
And that is a challenge. And Mary Lynn, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the relationship building activities that are not a one and done in that back to school toolkit to kind of integrate kids in. Do you have some observations on those that you might want to share?
There was a cadre. We formed a cadre of school counselors that helped put that together. To help develop, and actually it was a group of different disciplines. We ended up having everybody kind of join in and facilitate that. But the relationship building lessons that were there were with the purpose of at least having a core group of students that that would begin that piece and then be able to then welcome new students as they progress to come in, because there is that core and that foundation, and almost like open arms type of thing, receiving them in as they go. Those lessons, they're a minimum of 5. I think one level created 6 of them. They focused on classroom, creating a sense of community in that classroom. So that when that sense of community is established, it would then easily reintroduce a new member to that community. The topics vary a little bit by level. I mean, I have them right now. I can't remember exactly which ones are, but they are all relationship and community building. The focus was providing a virtual way to present that lesson as well for the teachers, because some of them obviously were doing Home Connect at the same time as they were doing in person. Others were just doing Home Connect. So there was a component in there to how to present that lesson virtually so that we wouldn't leave that group of students out, and those that were doing face-to-face and Home Connect at the same time, those students that would eventually possibly trickle in felt already as part of that community of that in that classroom. And as well as there was a component we built in there for classroom meetings, because that really built that sense of community. And we gave them questions that would trigger, that'll run around with that lesson. So that would trigger that development and that relationship building amongst the students. Does that help, Ms. Gibbons?
No, it does. And I like the component of the community piece within the classroom, because basically you are putting that onus on each student to be an ambassador for those coming in, to, you know, them come back into the fold, because even though they were there digitally, there's still a group of kids that feel like, you know, I'm not there, I'm really not a part of the team. And I have to tell you a quick story. I was talking to an administrator that there was these two girls that didn't come back, I think, until maybe the middle of last month. And the last time they were together, they had an argument about something. So the first day of school, they met to end the argument that they had back in March. I mean, can you imagine you hold that? Just wait till I get back, right? But anyway, I like the idea of having, you know, the children, because that helps them to learn inclusion and helping people come along. So that's very good. And thank you.
Ryan,
I have a question. Those was a 2 or 3 pretty serious topics that don't have to be taught from K through 12 on either substance abuse or human and sex trafficking. Who is training the people responsible for delivering that, or who's delivering it? It's my understanding some classroom teachers are going to have to be delivering some of that kind of sensitive curriculum. Who's training them on how to do it?
Excellent question. And so what we've had to really work hard to maintain perspective on, because I'm not going to lie to you, my staff and I, our heads about exploded when the State Board of Ed rules passed. We're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a really heavy lift, because first of all, when they said child trafficking, and it's K-12, a lot of parents' heads about exploded, because they think right away, you're going to discuss these horrible topics with my child. And we really had to dig into what does that look like and how do we do this well, and have a lot. And then thankfully, the Department of Education put out a couple of live meetings, and those were interesting too, because everyone had the same questions we did. So what it turned out to be is this: even though the 3 State Board of Education rules, mental and emotional wellness was very, it elicited a varied response, you know, from I don't want you in my child's business or filling their head with stuff to thankfully we're doing this. All kids need it. Same with the child trafficking one. The substance use and abuse prevention didn't seem to elicit any negative feedback, let alone really any feedback, because I think that's a topic that our kids have been exposed to over the course of time, because we don't want any of our children doing things that are harmful to their bodies or getting addicted to substances. So that one was kind of we didn't have a big, horrible time with that one. But really, with the child trafficking prevention and the mental and emotional wellness, that brought forth a lot of varied reactions, not only from our parents, from our teachers, from our principals, and even from us as a team, until we really dug into it. So here's what it ended up being. This is required health instruction, and there are health standards for every single grade level, from pre-K all the way to grade 12. And so when the State Board of Ed kind of cherry picked these 3 things, which, you know, in our internal discussions, we're like, yes, all kids need this, but how on earth are we going to move heaven and earth to make this happen right now? And they passed the last State Board of Ed rule September 29th of 2019. And we had to have all of our education completed by the last day of school in 2020. So not only do we have to basically move a very fast moving train down the track as we're building the track, we have to convince everyone why it's okay that they're going to do this. So because it's required health instruction and the topics are very low level educational topics, like we don't really talk in your face with kids about suicide. We actually talk about the topics and the things they need to think about that would, in a health instruction, would actually, in the best of circumstances, prevent them from becoming suicidal, because they're coping with those feelings of anxiety, sadness, incredible loneliness. Before the pandemic, we're planning this too. It helps them work through those things and gives them skills to reach out to each other, adults to reach out to students, and for students to reach out to adults. So, excuse me, when I say building their emotional toolbox, we're in a very educational way talking about these things and helping them identify the protective factors they may already have, and then help each other talk about what else might work. So we did this through video instruction. So the teachers, we gave them training. We trained them heavily in the fall of 2019. And we trained them again this year, but we had to do it online. And they were much more comfortable with it from what they told us this year, because it was their second year doing it. But we really had them, they have a script they read. They introduce the person whose video they're going to show. They show the video. And then they have some discussion questions that they have ready. We give them discussion questions and they can facilitate the discussion. If they're not comfortable, now a lot of teachers will tell us, you know, I don't know that I need to read the whole script. Well, that's fine. If you are a relationship builder, it's kind of your natural wheelhouse with students. And sometimes you are having these types of supportive discussions with your kids. You may not need to read every version of the script or every word. But for the teachers that didn't feel comfortable, we gave them the script and they said they felt much more comfortable reading a script or having something to lean on. And then for teachers that were really, really uncomfortable, we would sometimes put a peer teacher in the room with them, or a counselor or social worker that could assist them through those first few lessons so they could get kind of the flow of the instructional routine. I know I'm being long-winded and I'm sorry, but please know that we dealt with those myriad of emotions before we actually developed and deployed this. And we did a lot of coaching, a lot of leadership. We met with principals at elementary, middle, and high for several meetings, and our highest level administration, to really make sure that we looped them in, that we got feedback from them on the curriculum we chose, and then they helped us develop the instructional routines as well. Has it been perfect? No, it hasn't. But I think we're a lot further down the road this year than we were even at the beginning of last year, now that people have been doing it and their sense of self-efficacy has improved.
Thank you, Lori. I do want to just point out that it's almost 7:20 and we still need our board update from Mrs. Gittens. So if anybody has any last questions for Lori and Mary Lynn, now would be the time to ask them so we can stay on track for our meeting.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a statement, and I was going to hold it till the end, but I'm just going to do 30 seconds. Here's Mrs. Giddens probably is aware of this, but our delegation meeting that we're having December the 16th was kind of a bust because of the COVID situation. They cut everybody's presentation back to 2 minutes. And as you know, your lobbyist, Carol Green, had put a presentation together to really support everything that you folks were asking for, but particularly mental health issues was one of the asks. And I'm happy to say we had 3 of the 6 cities added to their presentation. That was Fort Myers, Bonita Springs, and Estero. The other 3 stuck with the water issues, but we did get, I can only give ourselves credit for 50% effective at being supportive of your initiative, but at least we got that into the ask from the 3 of our cities to try to move forward this year. As you already know, they've cut the budget way back in Tallahassee, but we did get our voices heard, not as loud as I would have liked, but anyway, I just wanted you to know that as the 2 administrators on the call that are dealing directly with this, that need the money.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Mrs. Gittens, we have reached the point in our meeting where we would like to hear your board member report.
Okay.
we could allow Lori and Mary Lynn to go on with the rest of their evening. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you all so very much.
Thank you. You've been
And thanks
wonderful.
for all you do.
Thank you. And by the way, I put a comment to Mr. Ryan in the chat because I forgot to highlight something in answer to his question. So I just wanted to let you know. Good night.
Okay, good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just a quick, for those that may not understand, we have 3 types of meetings. We have briefing meetings where there's new information that is in the hopper to get moved forward, where staff or whomever will come to the board and explain this is what the project or this is what the initiative is. And we are allowed to ask questions. And at those meetings, we can also have public comment or public questions. And we had one of those yesterday. And then we have workshops where we know what the initiative is and the issues, and we have further questions about it. Those do not have public input. And then, but at the workshop, we do talk about what are our questions or concerns that we're going to vote on the next day in the action meetings. So I think we call that the action, I forget what we call it now, but anyway, it's the work in the workshop, we ask all the questions about what we're going to vote on. So that on the
Agenda review.
agenda review, thank you, I couldn't think of it. And it was my idea to bring it up, but anyway. And at that point, we hash through with the department heads or whoever is there, any of the questions about things we are going to vote on the next night. The rationale behind that is on the Tuesday night, as you've seen in some of the meetings, the question is asked, anybody, you accept the agenda? Yes, we do. And vote on it, and there we go. So this has been a really good thing to kind of hash out things before that vote, so people don't have to pull things on the night of the action meeting. I just want to go over a couple little things with you and encourage you. The agenda comes out to the public and to us 7 days before meeting. So on Tuesday evening before a meeting, the agenda comes out. If there is a topic that you're interested in, please look on the agenda items on that Tuesday and get in touch with me or whoever is your representative, or send it into a question to the board office, because that gives us time to put that question forward and get that input. And it may be something we didn't think of prior to voting that next Tuesday. So it is extremely important, at least to me, to have input from all of you, from the community, from parents, from everyone on some of our initiatives. Major initiatives right now, proximity. Tonight, in fact, as we're speaking, it's probably going on, they're having proximity, I call them town halls. And they go out and they explain what proximity is, and they have the maps out there and let people ask questions. We had a long discussion about the proximity rollout in our meetings yesterday. And one of the things that came out of it is making sure that we explain things to people in a language they understand. We have a tendency, and it is a pet peeve of mine, if you watch the meetings, I'm always the one that's like, do you understand the average reading level in our nation is 6th grade? And, to no fault of anyone, but that's what it is. So if you are explaining to our district parents and community and our, socioeconomic groups and academic levels, if you want them to understand, you need to break it down. You need to have it in a simplistic way that they can understand what's going on. That here is this proximity project. What it basically is about creating neighborhood schools. And here, yes, go ahead.
I just want to bring this up, Mrs. Gittens, because it's something that came up today. Somebody actually approached me and said, at your CSI meeting tonight, can you mention this? And you're talking about it. So I just wanted to bring it up, which is a lot of parents don't know what the term proximity plan means. Oops, did we? Oh, they don't know what the term proximity plan means. So
Right.
when you're advertising, parents come to the proximity plan meetings and find out all about the proximity plan. They're not necessarily paying attention because they don't even know what proximity plan means or why it's important to them to know about it.
You go there.
So I did want to bring that up because somebody in the community asked me to, and it's speaking directly to what you're talking about.
And thank you so much. I can take that nugget back and say, it's not just me. There are people out there that are not understanding this. I have always said, yeah, we know $25 words, but we're not going to get the message across unless we use the sprinkling of $5 and $10 words and make sure people understand. One of our strategic plan items every year is parent and community involvement. And people cannot be involved in something they don't understand, just like you were saying. So a couple of us yesterday were talking about it, and we were asking them that in the next phase of this, when they go out, not to start out with the talking heads, but perhaps have computers sitting out and give everyone a little card and say, this is how you get onto the website, and when you get on, put in your address. It will pull up your zone for proximity or your area. Within that proximity area or zone, there will be 4 or 5 schools. Now, this is only rolling out for elementary, not this next year, but the following year. So it's only elementary schools involved with this right now. So that zone will show you the 4 or 5 elementary schools that you could select for your child to go to. And people want to know, they want hands-on, they want to know what is in this for me. So that's what we're trying to get across, is to help them understand, break it down, explain it very simplistically, and then you will get the questions. People don't know the questions to ask because they don't even understand the process. So that's one thing that we are working on. There's a meeting tonight in Three Oaks, and there's one tomorrow at Varsity Lakes. And if anyone is interested. Now, the other thing is, we can give you, and Cindy can probably put that out, the link to the website. And it's perfect because a lot of people cannot get to the meetings, that you can get on the website. But I think, Cindy, we also need a little blurb at the beginning to simplify it, that now you're on the website, all you have to do is put in your address right here, and then you can see what you're looking for and let them know what to look for. So that is a work in progress. One of the things Mr. Davis, who's the consultant that is working on it, said that stuck with me is that it is in the early stages and they are collecting input, and to be able to make possible changes as necessary. There are 4 versions of the zones. And the final one, the 4th one, is the one they're kind of looking at a little bit stronger because it has pieces of all the first 3. There is a citizens committee that, has worked with them to get to this point. But when Cindy sends you the link to that, go on, put in your address. You should be able to see the explanation as to how to do that. And then it will show you and give you some information. I would like to see them, and I'm asking as well, that for each of those schools, maybe that can link to the website for that school, because then you can see actually what that school is like and the types of things that they do. But like I said, we're in the infancy stages of it, but we're getting there. The other hot topic right now is, Mr. Ribble, I know you'll know this, the K-8 at Three Oaks and Estero. And there's a lot of discussion about that. I would suggest you guys go back to our briefing meeting and our workshop and all yesterday and Monday to kind of get some information about that. let me just say on the proximity, there's some people that are concerned about, integration, segregation. Are we doing that all over again? And that was one of my concerns. How do you do neighborhood schools and keep the demographics right in line with integration and all that? So the superintendent and Mr. Davis said that they are working on a process that will do that. So we'll see that roll out in a bit. Personnel, we need teachers. We still need teachers, a lot of teachers. But what we are doing now, we do have substitutes, permanent substitutes, and but we want to get as many teachers as possible. The issue was, we found out there were a lot of teachers that did return from the Home Connect and the Lee Virtual School, but a lot of them were in those teaching situations because of health situations. And so when they were asked to come back, some of them, a lot of teachers have taken family leave. They haven't left, they have taken the family leave. So that leaves us without teachers as well. I mentioned briefly with the mental health that we had an influx of kids come back first quarter in October. They have been trickling in ever since school started. And we had a large number come in on this Monday. All of that was based on the fact that the governor had sent the edict that if a child that was not face-to-face had a grade of D or F, they were highly encouraged to come back. If the parent decided not to send them back, they had to sign a waiver to not do that. Let me think if there's anything else. Guest teachers. Big push on kindergarten readiness is one of the things we're working on. We do have issues in as far as data, getting our kids into pre-K. It is extremely important for their going forward in their education. And we had a whole presentation on that. So you can go on the briefing and the workshop and watch that as well. Invocation is something that we're working on. We went to the board members doing it, then we went to nothing at all, then the moment of silence, and then, right now we're at a moment of silence while we are, but we have decided to do invocation again, and it will be using community members, and there's a whole policy that's being written, and we'll get that out to you. And it's also for your purview in the briefing. You can go back and see that as well. So in a quick nutshell, that's some of the things that we're working on. Really, really busy. And I really beg for your input. If you look at that on Tuesday or anytime therein and you have questions, just email me and say, ask them this. And I will definitely put it out there and say to the rest of the board, this is a suggestion from the community. Okay. And I went 2 minutes over. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Gittens. I appreciate that information. We are 2 minutes over. Does anybody have anything they want to share quickly for the good of the order?
Just very quickly, Dr. Stork, I'd like to remind everybody that we will actually have a presentation on the proximity plan at our February meeting. Adam Malloy, who is our coordinator for community engagement, will join us that evening. So if you have some time to go ahead and look at the information ahead of time, that's wonderful. He'll also have a lot of information to share, and then any recommendations that the committee might choose to provide, you'll have time to do that at our February meeting.
Perfect.
So talk to your fellow, community people and parents like you did. Get their input and bring it. We can't change what we don't hear.
Great. Thank you. Thanks to everyone, and looking forward to seeing you all in February. Be well.
All right. Thank you all so much.
We
And Bill,
do need to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Ryan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Amanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.